Donald, and Mike.
Hey, welcome to the Upland Nation bonus podcast. Scott Linden here. Glad you could join me. Producing this one in the field, actually, on a rest day during a Montana trip that I thought would be fun as an experiment. If nothing else, we'll call it Road Trip 1 for the season and see if it's of value to you for any number of reasons. I've learned a lot and thought it would be interesting to share some of that with you. Some of it will be hunting related, in fact, but many of the observations I've made are kind of travel and fellowship oriented. But you know, that's half the reason we go anyhow. Yes, we'll get into the dog work. We'll get into the birds and the habitat as well. So stick around for all of that. Of course, it's all made possible by our sponsors, and they include MidwayUSA.com, LandTrust.com, TrulockChokes.com, among others. So thank you, sponsors, for making these bonus episodes available, well, to everybody who cares to enjoy them. Kind of go chronologically on this one because, you know, as J.R.R. Tolkien said in one of his Hobbit books, all who wander are not lost. And I think that holds true when we are on a hunting trip of any sort, whether it's just a day trip or anything else. So starting with, you know, leaving home. You know what you mean. Once you get over the mental checklist and realize, okay, I think I brought everything I need, or at least I hope I did, and you get on to the hopes and dreams of your trip, you also are looking at the changes as you get farther from home and closer to your destination. In my country, it's the transition from high desert to wheat. Yeah, when you're heading in a specific direction, you're into the Palouse of eastern Washington, which is wheat and now canola, of course. But isn't that canola everywhere? It is. In fact, in Montana, we're seeing more and more of it this year. And then wind turbines. In fact, I'll never forget getting permission to hunt somebody's land up there when it was just wheat, and now it's all wind turbines. Yeah, they're still farming the wheat, but the wind turbines are the cash crop these days. Think of that however you wish. Yeah, there's an upside, and then there's another side as well. But that is the look of rural America these days. It's got a little bit of everything. Didn't see any solar installations once I left my hometown and the places out there that are easier to connect to the grid. I think that's one of the big things for that. So on the way, of course, you do realize there are things you forgot, and you stop at one of the small locally owned grocery stores in one of those little towns en route to your ultimate destination. And there's always something else there that's of interest, whether it's a casino, and casinos have a very specific definition in Montana, but it could be, you know, a great little restaurant, or it could be, of course, the usual, a little gas pump or two and other things like that. But the joy of it is the locals are always helpful and nice and always willing to help. I stopped at one and bought the groceries, and she asked me at the checkout counter if I was going to be buying gas too. And I said, yeah, I am. She says, do you have a phone number with us? I said, I'm not from here. She says, oh, I'll give you my phone number. You can use it and get, 8 cents off a gallon. Yeah. When was the last time that ever happened to you, except on a road trip into those small towns? Yes. So I stocked up, supported the local economy such as it is, on top of all the things that just help you transition from where you were to where you're going. that road time is therapy in and of itself. That's just one example. The gas discount. You do gradually, in most cases, maybe in some radical cases, maybe if the geography is notably different, it's easier. There are different paces to life. And as you're going down some of those rural highways, you realize that they are taking you to not only a different place, but a different time, at least from a mental standpoint, emotional standpoint, whatever. And when you stop, you talk about different things with different people. First thing I did when I was pumping gas elsewhere on the trip was talk with the guy across the pumps on the other island about his grain harvest this year. And it sounds like everybody in Montana, at least, had a great year. So glad for you, and hope everybody else who's listening and is in the production world is enjoying the harvest, the reaping of what they sowed. Yeah, it's pretty much all in now in those big grain bins of one sort or another. But there were a few uncut fields. Maybe they're not even going to get cut. And coming back to one of my many old lives, I was going toward a big rodeo town, small town, big rodeo. And the last day of the rodeo was just about over, mid-afternoon. And the only reason I thought about it and realized it was the last day is all the rodeo queens from other communities. And if you're in that business, you know what I mean. You have a rodeo in town B. The queens from town A, town C, town X, Y, and Z, they all go too. They're in the parade, they're in the grand entry, and then at the end of the last day, they're all headed for their home communities to do the laundry, groom the horses, and then head for yet another rodeo. Of course, Flick is intrigued by all of this as well, and I gotta admit, he rides shotgun most of the time with me. Pretty good conversationalist, and he never criticizes my jokes either. So he gets to ride up front, gives me a chance to learn a little bit more about what he thinks and what he likes and what he doesn't like. And we're working on a couple things that I'm not sure I really care whether I break him of this or not, but maybe your dog does it too. Whether you're sitting, standing, whatever, your dog will put one of his paws on you. Usually it's on my arm. And he doesn't do anything, he just puts it there. And I know some people will argue about how that is a dominance action. And I might argue that. It doesn't bother me enough, and it seems to make him happy. And listen, the guy works hard for me. Maybe your dog works hard for you. It's worth it to just cut him a little slack in that regard. I think he does want to be paid attention to, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's only two of us, and in most cases, that's probably true for you as well. So I'm going to kind of just leave it be for now, and maybe we'll break him of it some other time. So we crossed the border, one of those high mountain passes, the Continental Divide, into Montana after all that boring stuff. We're in the forest now, and in fact, it's funny. The place I am parked right now is a place I've stopped 3 or 4 different times over the years with TV crews and with my spouse. It's a quiet little town that's got a neat little campground right in town, and it's free. So you boondockers out there, look for that in Lincoln, Montana, off Highway 2, I believe it is. And if you can hear, they're working on something right now that is backing up, if you can hear that. there's nostalgia in all of that, the landmarks, the places you've maybe hunted in the past. Maybe it's a favorite restaurant or a stopping place. And I love this one, even if I'm not going to stay, because I know I can always run my dog safely. And, that's something as we travel more starting about now that you might want to, give some more attention to. A highway rest stop is noisy, it's crowded, there's a lot of traffic, there's not a lot of room. I've found some places over the years that I like a lot, and I might have mentioned a few of these before, but I like schools when school is out. I like Little League or other baseball fields, particularly both of those locations, because there's usually a fence around most of where you might turn your dog loose. And, I got no compunction about either of those. We're taxpayers. We're paying in one way or another. We're helping the schools. And as long as we're good guests and we clean up, I don't have an issue with that unless it's specifically prohibited. And then I've built enough Little League fields over the years. I feel like I should be carrying a card that says, get out of jail free. This guy's done more for Little League than most people. But anyway, I try to be a good guest, and I use those in particular. There's probably some others out there that might, a big church that has, something in the back is another good one. Again, being a good guest, and if there is some question about it, there's probably some way for you to ask permission. Anyway, along the road, stopping in places like that and thinking about, wow, it's kind of like, and someday that'll be a fun exercise. I'll do this someday. Writing a bird hunting version of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." You know as well as I that the anticipation, whatever is your opener, the week before, the night before, the morning of, it's all the same. It feels just like when you were 6 years old and listening for those reindeer hooves on the roof and the jingle of the sleigh bells from Rudolph and crew. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that's what it was like that first day en route to northeast Montana, which is the ultimate destination. Oh, I ought to mention also, I'm doing this while being accompanied by a dram or two of Craig Lockey. I'm not a snob about single malt scotches, but I just like them more than I like Kentucky whiskeys and bourbons. And Craig Lockey, Craiglellachie, is the only 13-year-old single malt I've ever seen. There may be others out there, but that one is the only one I've ever found. It's pretty good. Again, it's kind of a nice balance. It's not too peaty. It's just right. Craiglellachie, if you're looking for a new, and I am always looking for that. Okay, night number 2, spent en route at one of my favorite places to camp, a county fairgrounds. This one happened to be in Fort Benton, and it's a classic because it's a very small county fairgrounds. I've stayed in plenty of those, and again, if you're looking for tips, that's a good one. Many fairgrounds will have some sort of camping available. Yeah, I'm pulling a trailer, so it's, I'm not roughing it or anything, but it's generally really quiet. It's very welcoming. If there's anybody working that time of year, they're usually pretty good people. They want to make sure you're taken care of. The price is right, and they really take pride in what they do. Yeah, the county fair is still the place where everybody kind of shows off, revels in the attention of whatever they did, whether it's raising good hay or livestock. Many of them have food, crafts, and arts. All of those things are on display. And I'm not saying go during the fair. In fact, you probably couldn't get a spot. But the same mentality is still there. And that is kind of fun to see. I'm Scott Linden. This is a bonus episode of the Upland Nation podcast. And on location outside next to Highway 2 in Lincoln, Montana, kind of recapping my first hunt of the year in northeast Montana. On the way home now and reveling in the fun that I had and some of the things I learned, which I hope I'm sharing with you right about now. One of them being the Facebook meme that's going around right now. Sometimes it's couched in, hey, one of the joys of retirement is this long list, as opposed to all the things you whippersnappers think are important, like the household culture or a new car or a big house or whatever. I go both ways. I've been the fastest rat in the race, and now I'm not, and I'm glad for it. The first item on that list of things that we learn to appreciate more as we have been there and done that enough is on the list as slow mornings. And that is absolutely the truth. Whether it's on the road, which is a little harder, or in hunting camp, which is even harder, but at home in particular, one of the lessons I'm learning is there's nothing wrong with having 2 cups of coffee before you get moving. Hang around, watch the sun come up, enjoy yourself, especially in new locations. The dog hangs with me. There's no one else up. Even the other dog doesn't get up. So whether you're at the county fairgrounds or at bird camp or anything else, always something to be said for enjoying a slow morning, which for all intents and purposes I think simply means don't rush into all the more so-called more important stuff that's out there. Enjoy all of the above. So I'm driving what they call the High Line in Montana. It was named after the railroad that went along just our side of the Canadian border, the High Line. And there still is a High Line railroad up there. It's not called that anymore. I think it's even a Burlington Northern Santa Fe. Ironic, isn't it? Santa Fe is nowhere near any high lines. But anyway, it's one of those interesting reality checks. Malta, Montana reminds you how close you are to the Canadian border, too. There's actually a U.S. Customs and Border Patrol facility up there. I guess we have problems on both ends of the country, north and the south, when it comes to illegal entries, and that was kind of a reality check that I don't think I really needed to have that, but I did. Getting started on the hunting part of this thing, pulled into the town that I was in, and not bad looking ground after sharptailed grouse in particular. And I've been around the block a few times with sharptails. I probably hunted them for 10 seasons all told. Kind of know what the cover should look like. Generally speaking, you want a lot of grass. You want it to be about knee high. A biologist once said, tall enough to bend in the wind. That's what the Sharpies like. And you want it thick, but not too thick. In fact, another biologist once said, if you can't see a soccer ball at 40 feet in the grass, then it's too thick. Birds can't see predators. They can't see their escape routes very well, so too much. And learned that last year in Montana when we were in deeper, taller, thicker stuff. And you know what came out of there? Just the opposite, and just bizarre Hungarian partridge, who usually like a lighter type of cover, even thinner than the sharptails. Other great sharptail advice I've received over the years and was reminded of by Trevor Walls of landtrust.com when I hunted together with him on the first part of this trip. Rolling hills. If there's water anywhere, the birds aren't necessarily going to water, but they are hanging in the The riparian area, certain times of the year and the day, they react quite dramatically in my experience to changes in temperature. If it's really hot and bright and sunny out, they're looking for shade a lot, and riparian areas will have a little bit more of that. The thick stuff on the downhill side of dikes that are holding water, another place that is a little bit cooler for them. Lots of potential out there in this country that I was in northeast Montana. The cover was good. We put Flick down on the ground first. He's doing well, and in fact, over the course of just a couple hours, covered 11.5 miles of country. I only covered about 3, but that's pretty much, par for the course on open country that's relatively level compared to, say, chucker ground. He's moving well. He's not in as good a shape as he could be. That's one argument for coming out to Montana early in the season. You get a few weeks of a jump on other bird seasons, and your dog might get into a little bit better shape. Me, I'm still working on that foot, and the torn ligament is healing, but not as fast as I'd like it to. So our days are a little shorter than they would be otherwise. It's getting warm anyway, and you want to be careful about that, because the last thing you want to do is run out of water way out there in the prairie and have to bring your dog back when he's in a hurting way. So be mindful of that if you're ever thinking about going. And as this is recorded, there's still plenty of sharptail season left. So watch for that, and plan ahead. Bring plenty of water. I'll be back with more hunting from this bonus edition of the Upland Nation podcast here in the aspen and pine woods of Lincoln. I almost said Lincoln, Nebraska. Got Nebraska on my mind right now too. Lincoln, Montana, pretty little place. Be back after a word from one of our sponsors, and that would be MidwayUSA.com. They have just about everything for hunting, shooting, and the outdoors, and every day they're adding more and more dog gear. Yeah, they've probably got it, and if they don't, they will have it soon. So keep checking in at MidwayUSA.com, and sign up for their email or their text notifications, because then the next time you make a big honkin' order, you'll get 10% off the entire order. Yeah, make a note of that. MidwayUSA.com, 10% off just for signing up for their email notifications or their text notifications. There's some of that Craig Lockey, and it's cooling down pretty fast here in the forest, so maybe I'm grateful to have a little bit of medicinal heating element, if you will. Scott Linden here with the Upland Nation podcast, bonus edition road trip to northeast Montana. We are hunting primarily. We hunted a little bit of everything. We actually hunted some Indian reservation ground, but we also hunted some private ground through the landtrust.com outfit, and then we hunted some block management access as well, and that was pretty good as well. The joy of block management is the landowners only make money if they're taking care of that ground in a way that attracts hunters. It's a per person, per day payment from the state, from the fund that you and I and everybody else pays into when we hunt in Montana. So this wasn't bad. Pretty good cover, a little water here and there, and it worked pretty well. The challenge becomes you don't know for most of the times that whether anybody else has hunted it, whether it's that day or any time in the days preceding your hunt. I had that happen yesterday. I was searching out a piece of block management ground in a nearby area, nearby town, and got all the way out there. Really dicey, muddy roads. We had had rain the night before, and come around the corner, and there's somebody else's truck at the sign-in place. Just whipped it. Didn't even hardly slow down. I know Flick's complaining because he thought he was going to hunt there, but turned around, didn't even slow down, and went back to the next place. And a good reason to plan ahead, get your online mapping app, and develop an itinerary. So if that happens to you, you'll have another place nearby, which is what we did. We turned around, went to another spot, not too far away, maybe a couple miles away, and kind of at the other end of the same draw that I wanted to hunt, which we never got to because we kept finding birds on the flat ground. Yet they're not always there. In fact, a lot of folks will tell you they're usually in the high spots so they can look for predators, see what's out there. But we're just walking the flat stuff en route to the draws with all the folds and the little tiny draws going down into it. Was going to hunt the leeward side of those. It was a little windy by then. I walked about 6 miles on that one. Flick did 17 miles. Yeah, and they were fast. He was really moving at times up to 17, 18 miles an hour. Averaged about 9 miles an hour. There's one of the joys of your GPS collars, knowing that sort of thing. There was nothing really cool about this place except that it was near an abandoned Cold War military installation. And you see this if you're on the Great Plains, and I don't care what state you're in, you'll often find, well, you wonder what that thing is along the side of the road. It's just a fenced in place. A lot of those are missile silos, from the Cold War, and some of them are still functional. So stuff like that is out there, and a lot more of it than you'd think in the Midwest, the Plains states, because they were unreachable by many of the threats of the era. The best part about us in that country was, like I said, it was flat ground, good, the best habitat I've seen for a while, and we're just covering all that flat stuff, and all of a sudden I look up and there's Flick on a point. It went blowing hard, but Flick's on a point, and I'm thinking, well, it's not the most intense point I've seen, but it was very clearly indicative of birds in the general area. So I was able to swing around in front of him and walk toward him. And if you ever have the chance, of course, that's always a good strategy, because what that does is it cuts off one escape route for birds. If they're going to run, they can only run out the sides instead of out front. And in this case, they didn't run at all. They flew. Yeah. And boy, oh boy, did they flew. There, 4 of them went right, 1 of them went left. I picked the one on the left. It's a little bit easier shot for me, and it was the closer of the shots. And that was that. Yes, indeed. Dropped that one. Tried to swing harder on one of the others, but if you've been there, you know what I mean. You take a left-right crosser and a right-left crosser. You're just waving your gun around like you're in a parade or something. But that was a propitious start to that hunt. Of course, I'm working on Flick's retrieve constantly, and he's bringing it back, and he's kind of dawdling, and then he puts it down. It's hot, and he brings it back, and so I'm still working on this, and then I'm realizing, oh my God, I should reload, because there's always, there it goes. Yeah, the one laggard, the straggler that was hoping you'd walk away by now, finally decided his best strategy was to fly away. And of course, I'm sitting there with my shotgun in the wrong hand, a bird in the other hand. Those are the breaks, I guess. And it it was a lesson. I learned it again later in that same day. But I think, there, now you know. And the same holds true for valley quail sometimes, for chukar sometimes. I've never seen Huns do it that way. They always fly as a bunch. And in fact, my friend Trevor had a perfect observation of that I need to share with you anyhow. Later that day, I had to put the foot up on ice and do all the things the doctor tells you to do. So he went out with, he's got a string of 8 dogs, and they're all wonderful dogs and almost a matched set. 6 English pointers that are basically white with basically black heads. Loved hunting with those dogs. One of them very young. The other 2 are short hairs, litter mates, and joined at the hip. It's kind of cute. Trevor took his young dog and one of the more mature dogs out just to put her on another field. And she hasn't had a lot of wild bird contacts, and I think this is the interesting part. And if you're looking for motivation or inspiration, there is hope out there for everybody. His dog's, of course, very well bred and very well trained, but this dog still putting in the miles and the time and the wild bird contacts. So they're hunting some ground out there, not too far from us, and she's kind of following the older dog, doing what young dogs do, kind of going through the motions, until she's the one in the scent cone and the older dog is not. That dog hits a point, Trevor says, and I'm the hair on the back of my neck is standing up just thinking about how this all played out for him. She hits the point, the birds fly, it's Huns, they all get up as a bunch, turn, the moment they get airborne, they turn sideways so the wind picks up their wings like a sail. And of course they fly right out of his shot string. So nothing in the way of a tangible reward for the young dog, but it was the light bulb moment. He says even without being able to bring back a shot Hungarian partridge, that young girl finally realized, this is what it's about. And he said he could see it in the rest of her actions for the rest of that hunt. She was purposeful, she was strategic, she was working the wind better. He said even her head looked like she had figured things out. Good on you, Trevor and Jack, both. So there's hope for all of them. And if you've got a young dog, the lesson there is miles in the field, number of bird contacts. That's what makes a bird dog. All right, so we're in another spot. And again, this is even better than those spots. And we're finishing up the day. And Trevor's got 2 of his dogs on the ground. And we've gone birdless for this whole walk. And a lot of times we're doing walks in, an hour or 2 chunks because we want to rotate the dogs. It's warm enough that you want to do that. Or the places we go are just not big enough. We're about back to the trucks. And there's the shelter belt surrounding the old farmstead. And there's the 2 dogs, a point and a back. Imagine that shelter belt, which is just a long line of small trees, and I'm not sure what they were. They might have been even choke cherries or something like that. And they're kind of parallel to that and a little bit off in the deeper grass. There's no deeper grass anywhere else except under that shelter belt. Trevor goes one side, I go the other side, and I must have been living right that day because birds start coming out my side. Most of them doubling right back and over the dogs. So I'm standing there waiting, standing and waiting. And they just keep coming out in ones and twos. And you can hear a whole bunch more in there. Then a couple go out the far end of the shelter belt. And they don't go very far, but they drop back in. And then the one gets up and it's finally clear for me. Wham! Just one shot from my 28 gauge. Thank you, pointer shotguns. And two birds fell. I hadn't even seen the close one. I was so focused on the far one. The close one flew into the shot string at exactly the right time, or the wrong time, depending on if you're the sharp-tailed grouse or the shooter. Woohoo! That was something else right there. And finally, on the board for that walk. As soon as, of course, those birds hit the ground, one more comes out and I get another shot. We regroup at the corner. We're going to go down the other side of the other corner and head up the other shelter belt wall. When once again, he drew the short straw one more time. Everything, despite my best intentions, making noise, kicking stuff, throwing rocks, all the birds flew my way. And they were too close to the truck. So I had to settle for 3 birds on that walk. I shouldn't say it that way. I'm grateful for every one of them. And watching those dogs work was worth every bit of it. Did I mention we jumped a whitetail out of there when we first parked? Yeah, very nice. Thank you, Trevor, for doing all the hard work. And thank you, Land Trust, for all of your help making some of these trips happen for us. Okay, the next day, it's me and Flick. And Trevor's headed back to work. He does some guiding as well, so he was off to do some of that even further north and further east. So it's me and Flick, and we're looking for spots. And again, you can do as much e-scouting as you like, but at some point, ground truthing is the way to do it. So we had done that. The first day we got to this town, I didn't have a license. You buy licenses in 3-day increments when you're a non-resident, or you buy one for the whole season. So I scouted instead, and I'd marked this place as, a slightly more potential than some of the others. And so what the heck? Let's go there. And we will go there in just a moment. Let me remind you that this is the Upland Nation podcast. It's a bonus episode, calling it Road Trip 1 for the 2024-2025 season. We're in northeast Montana, learning as we go and including putting the miles in on wild birds for the first time this season, which is, I'm grateful to be out this early in the season. Another spot with, I might call this the best cover of the whole trip. It was some sort of a wild grass. That's all I can describe it as. About knee-high, not much higher than that. And it was fairly thick. There was some bare ground, and the bare ground was full of grasshoppers. And yes, we all know that sharptails will eat almost anything, but if they are given the chance, that's what they will eat. And cleaning birds the next day, that's exactly what it was. There were so many grasshoppers in the crops of these birds. It was, I've never seen it quite that way. I've seen quail stuffed with other things, and grass shoots, for example. But I've never seen this many grasshoppers in one sharp-tailed grouse. So we were in the right place at the right time, that's for sure. And the wind was kind of hinky. It was changing direction a little. So I remembered a lesson from a great guide many years ago. He said, when you're hunting sharptails, you can't go wrong describing a big circle. Make a big loop with your hunt. And in this case, it made all sorts of sense. The first one was we could go all the way to that fence, and on the other side of that fence it had been grazed pretty badly, so that worked out fine. Then swing back around and then swing back towards the truck. 3 out of the 4 directions, the wind was okay. In a couple directions it was just right. In another direction it was kind of crosswind, which is better than having it at your back. And so we did that, and sure enough, Flick's on a point again. And this one I wasn't quite sure of, because it was a long way off, and he was, kind of trying to decide whether it was a bird or not. And it wasn't. So that happened a couple times, and I'm going to attribute it to the weird wind. It was very strong. So maybe there was a bird, but it was 400 yards upwind from him. I don't know. But as we came in and he got that wind on the crosswise from left to right, he hit another point, and it was a little bit more solid. He did a good job trying to hold as best he could, but there was still a little doubt in his mind about whether it was a bird or something else. I hustled up as best I could on my bad foot, and sure enough, 2 birds got up. They flew straight away into the kind of crosswinding as well, and just kept going. So I had one dead bird in my vest, and you know me, I think that if he's going to work that hard for me, and he held that point for a long time. So I popped off a shot and lobbed the bird, and he got to retrieve it, even though he didn't get to retrieve the one that I should have shot if I'd gotten there sooner. Sometimes I think he knows I'm tricking him. He's not that dumb. His owner is, but he's not. So then he's working, kind of in a way towards those birds. We're still working a crosswind there and getting ready to loop back. And up gets a bird right in front of me. And it might have been a holdout. It might have been a leftover from that, from the earlier covey flush. I don't know. Single bird gets up. I got a gun that's broken open on the wrong shoulder, but I pull it together and get a shot off. And sure enough, and don't you hate it when this happens, you see one leg drop. But he is motoring, and he's got the wind behind him now. So he is going. And I finally lose sight of him as he goes over a slight rise. But I know he didn't get farther because there's another rise where the only road in the place is. And I know he didn't get over that. So I'm hoping, okay, he landed, he died. And you talk to enough people about this. A bird that drops a leg, that doesn't mean you shot it in the leg. It generally means you shot it somewhere else. So I'm hoping I shot it in some spot that will actually kill it eventually. But I send Flick off in that general direction, and he's just rocking it across the landscape. He must have seen it from where he was. So he's heading the right general direction, and I've got a laser focus on the spot where I think that bird actually might have went down. So I'm walking straight for it, and I'm trying to direct him back and forth because the wind is, again, getting a little hinky, trying to work him into wherever the scent cone might be, what there is of it, with a bird that's been air-washed. And nothing. So I move up 50 yards, do it again, move up 50 yards, do it again. I'm about ready to give up, but he is not. And in fact, if you watch your dog. You watch your dog carefully. You know when when the switch got flipped. And he all of a sudden tightens up his pattern, and his tail stops wagging, and it just a little bit more straight out back, kind of one of those continental points. But he's not pointing yet until, wham, he is pointing. And I'm liking that. I think they call it a continental tail in the trial business, and you'll never win a trial with a tail like that. Straight back, just along the back of the dog, straight across. But I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I'm thinking, okay, after 15, 20 minutes of looking for this shot bird, he found it, and it's not dead, or he'd have gone in because I'd given him a fetch command several times. So he's pointing a live wounded bird. And about the time I get almost into gun range, the bird gets up again. So I just yell, fetch! And this bird is flying 3 feet off the ground, and Flick is flying 2.5 feet off the ground. And he's winning. So 200 yards later, that bird drops again, and Flick does a somersault as he slams on the brakes, gets up again, and grabs that bird. And that's how we ended that day and that trip to Northeast Montana. Got the one bird. I feel good about that. The bumper sticker. Conserve game, hunt with a trained dog. It's absolutely true. It worked for us, and I hope it works for you. Northeast Montana is one of those places where you feel right at home. It doesn't matter where you come from. In the course of 5 or 6 days out here, I've run into 4 or 5 different people who recognize my voice or my dog, and we ended up becoming friends, spending some quality time together over a craft beer or more. You don't need to be, that kind of person to make a friend in some of these places where you go. That's another bonus to go. And as you know, I'm evangelizing for small town hunting because it is truly a slice of Americana that none of us get enough of. So there you go. A wonderful start to the sharptail season for us. Flick has got a little bit of hitch in his get along, just like his owner. We've got a few days to recover before chukar season starts. If you're headed out, good luck to you. If you've already been out, I hope it was a good one. I hope in the course of listening to this rambling discussion about all sorts of fun things, rural and otherwise, that you learned something. And have a great season. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast, a bonus edition, road trip number 1, 2425. Thanks for listening. And here's where I drop the mic.